Have you been thinking that you have a problem with drinking too much? You might have what's referred to as an alcohol use disorder, or you might even be considering the fact, well, maybe you're becoming addicted to alcohol. So I'm going to go over the diagnostic criteria that's from the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostical Statistical Manual for Mental Health Disorders, and that includes the substance use disorders. So normally the criteria will begin with levels of functioning and signs and symptoms. If you have 2 to 3 of these symptoms, that usually is a mild demonstration of alcohol use disorder. If you have from, say, 4 to 6, that's a moderate substance use disorder with alcohol. If it's 6 or more, that would be defined as severe substance use alcohol disorder. So I'm going to go over the criteria and then you can consider that. Now, first off, you're going to look at alcohol as taken more often and for longer periods of time than you normally would have been doing before, or you might even been wanting to cut down somewhat, but you're drinking more and you're drinking more often, and that continues. There's also a persistent desire to stop drinking so much and you're unsuccessful with it. So you say, well, I'm going to go out this day or this evening and I'm not going to drink so much, but that doesn't happen. You do. You drink more than you had planned on and you drink for longer periods of time. Could be a combination of both or one or the other. A great deal of time is actually spent getting alcohol, getting the money for it, getting maybe you're hungover. It takes you a while to get over that. So procuring the alcohol, using the alcohol, and getting over the effects of it, that's going to be taking up more time in your life. Also, you would have a craving for alcohol. You really want to have it. It's almost like entertainment or a friend. It makes you feel better. So people drink for all different types of reasons, but you would see that showing up more often. Recurring use of alcohol is starting to interfere with your major life role assignments like school, could be work, could be your family activity, could be your physiological health, things that you do for hobbies and fun. It starts to take more of a center stage in your life. And some people refer to substance use disorders or addiction as becoming down the road a primary drive. Now, a primary drive becomes the central focus. It takes precedent over all these other areas of your life, becomes more important than your family, becomes more important than your health. It becomes more important than your job and your finances and your marriage and your time with your children. That's usually typically farther down the line when you're really looking at compulsive and addictive use where you just have a loss of control. But can become a primary drive, which once again is defined. It becomes more important than all these other areas of your life. Then you have continued alcohol use despite persistent and recurring problems that show up. Could be problems at work, in your marriage, at home, and you're having these effects of alcohol are really starting to cause a number of issues. Father Martin, who was a well-known expert in alcoholism, said that whatever causes a problem is a problem. So sometimes people will say, well, it's not really showing up very much for me, but if it's causing you problems in these areas, be honest with yourself. Tell yourself the truth. You're the one that needs to be honest and truthful because no one else is going to understand this usually quite as much as you. Important social, occupational, recreational activities, educational events are starting to fall by the wayside because your drinking now is starting to take over a major life role function more so than these other events. Then you've got recurrent use of alcohol in situations which typically would be referred to as dangerous. You might be drinking and driving. Some people get DUIs. You might have it at work where you're running machinery and you're not doing as well with that. Or you might be around other people. You could be placing them in danger. So you're seeing some of the alcohol use behavior is starting to affect your level of functioning in areas that could actually become dangerous. Another criteria that you would see is alcohol use is continued despite having a knowledge of persistent and recurrent physiological and physical costs and events in your life. You might not be sleeping very well. You don't get a good REM sleep if you're hungover or alcohol use is ingrained in your physiological state. You just don't get to rest very well. You might have bloodshot eyes. You are not eating very well. You're not exercising very well. So there's a whole bunch of physiological events that can show up in your life due to alcohol use disorder. Then you also can have a use continued despite knowledge of having persistent tolerance, meaning I'm starting to need alcohol more and more to get the same effect, or if I don't drink as much, I don't get as much of an effect. But either way, you're going to start to continue to want to get that initial effect and the euphoria and pleasure that you got from alcohol, because it does give you a payoff, but over time it requires more and more of the alcohol to get the same effect, or if you're not drinking as much, you won't get the effect you want or what you were seeking. Also, there's withdrawal where you don't feel normal if you're not drinking. And many people, as they get this criteria for more severity, they start to have withdrawal effects and they can't function normally unless they have alcohol. So another thing that will affect you is different methods. One is how long have you been drinking? Another one is what do you drink when you do drink? Another criteria that you can look at is what are the effects when you do start drinking? A lot of people don't drink that much, but once they start, they don't have any breaks. They can't stop and they continue until they have very negative effects. Another criteria that you can look at is your method of administration. There's a big difference between drinking beer on a vacation all day long or on out in nature, or you go on a walk, or you could be with your buddies shooting pool or something, and someone else that's drinking straight from a bottle at home where they're not even around other people. So this would be your method of administration or use. And then a final factor that you can look at is your genetics. You might have some genetic predispositions that run through families. You can read and study some of the findings about adult children of alcoholics. But my key issue here to discuss with you is be honest with yourself. Look at this criteria. You can find it in the DSM-5, Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders. Pull it up online. You can pull up a list with ChatGPT or any of the criteria, medical issues, doctors, addictions, SAMHSA, National Institute of Drug Abuse. Look at the criteria and be honest with yourself. If you need treatment and help, then get what you need to get better and restore. You don't want to develop down the road a compulsive use to alcohol where it's a loss of control. You have this tolerance and withdrawal. It'll tend to take over many areas of your life and leave you way behind in all the other areas of life that are most elemental and essential to have righteousness, peace, and joy. So look at AA, NA. Celebrate Recovery is an excellent biblically focused recovery program also. And that's all for now. I'll have more teachings on mental health disorders and substance use disorders in the future. Thank you and God bless.